Well, guys, thanks very much for joining me on my webinar today, where I'm going to promote my system, Elastilon. My contact details will be up behind me somewhere, so you're welcome to make notes and contact me at any time. Please type your questions, and we'll get a chance to do a Q&A and answer those questions for you. I'll just give you a little bit of brief history of myself. I was in the wooden flooring business for 31 years back in South Africa. As you can hear by my accent, I am not American yet. My whole family live in America, and I've come to America. I've been separated from them for the last 30 years, and I thought it's now time to be reunited with my family. So my family are American, and soon one day, please God, so will I be. So that's the reason I'm in the USA. So back in South Africa, my 31 years in wooden flooring, I'd done a lot. I was installing wooden floors. I even ran my own little flooring factory as well. I was installing with 6 fitting teams. In those days, we installed on sleepers. We had concrete slabs, and all our floors were nailed onto the sleepers, which were anchored to the concrete. And that's how we installed. As I said, I ran my own little flooring factory, so I machined or milled my own flooring for our installations. I closed that factory eventually. It got a little bit too much, and we went directly into full-time installation. I then partnered up with a couple of guys, and we started importing and distributing wooden flooring. So I've been involved in that as well, and I became the chairman of the Wooden Flooring Association in South Africa. So I've had a little bit of history and experience in the industry, and just to make myself au fait with what's happening on the American market, I've done 23 National Wood Flooring Association courses, online and in the classroom, and I've attended about 4 different installation schools here in America. So I'm hoping that my knowledge is suitable enough to match up to you guys, because I know you guys are all well professionals. Okay, it's enough of that. So let's just get down to what the Elastilon system and how I got to be involved in it. As I said, I came from the old school, and I nailed down on sleepers. And then one day I was at a factory we importing from in Austria, and I saw the guys gluing down solid wooden flooring, and I thought, but that's impossible because the glue needs to move. So I investigated a little bit, and found out that it's an elastic adhesive, which we did not have in South Africa. So I went back to the company who had a branch in South Africa and spoke to them, and 6 months later we had elastic adhesives on the South African market. I then moved all my fitting teams, all 6 of them, to gluing down wooden floors. So from nail down, because of course we had a height difference, because the sleeper gave us an extra height difference, which was always a problem. So now we can glue down directly on slab. But once we started that, we started having some issues with moisture and failures. Wouldn't say every job, of course not, but there were issues. We did our moisture tests, and even though we did moisture tests, we still, at the rainy season, some of the moisture will be sucked into the slab and would cause a problem with cupping. And I'm sure some of you guys have seen that kind of problems. A while later, a guy who had been to Germany to Domatex exhibition, and he said, Stephen, he saw a sticky mat. It was very interesting. And I thought to myself, well, I went from sleepers to adhesives. Let me investigate this. So I investigated that. And I thought it was very interesting. And I went to Holland. I flew on the next flight out to Holland, and I signed the deal there and then. So now I'm going to drop in a little video to show you what pricked my interest.
Elastilon Self-Adhesive Installation Systems represents a revolutionary and more secure way of installing solid and engineered tongue and groove wooden flooring. This amazing system has been successfully used to install wooden flooring throughout the world for 25 years. The Elastilon Self-Adhesive Installation System provides the solution for the age-old problem of moisture and pressure cupping, as well as non-adhesion. The Elastilon system is the most installer-friendly lane system, since there is no need for paint-on moisture barriers or messy adhesives, as well as no need for nail guns or fancy clip systems. An installation using the Elastilon self-adhesive installation system could not be simpler. The Elastilon system can be installed over concrete and plywood subfloors, as well as tiles, above, on, or below grade. All subfloors should be tested dry and then flat to the spec of 1/8 of an inch over 10 foot, and then vacuumed clean prior to installation. This amazing system creates a floating floor without any glue in the tongue and groove at all. Due to the floor being floating, it enables one to lay a well-overlapped poly-moisture barrier over the subfloor, stopping moisture-related problems in their tracks. Now, the Elastilon mat can be rolled out perpendicular to direction of the new wooden floor. Each row of Elastilon should be measured to allow an additional length of material, measuring the width of 2 or 3 boards. Always make sure that the Elastilon rows do not overlap each other. Peel back the spare piece of protective foil from the mat and cut off the exposed form, leaving a flap. This flap becomes the surface on which installation begins. The protective foil makes the installation of wooden flooring on Elastilon child's play. Now, lay your first rows of boards. Ensure you have spaces between the floor and the wall to create the required expansion joint. When pulling back the protective foil, always allow it to remain underneath the last fitted board, so the installation can continue effortlessly right across the room. If you pull the protective foil too far, simply tuck it back under again so it does not get caught between the next row of boards. Expert installers should fold up the protective foil and use these as starting flaps on future jobs, which eliminates the wastage factor of cutting the mat to create a flap each time. We call this a dummy starter flap. One now uses these dummy flaps for the start of an installation, and one continues laying on this dummy flap until it pulls completely out from under the boards, and then these flaps are set aside for future use. One can then continue the installation using the actual protective foil attached to the mat. A dummy flap is also used when 2 mats meet, which will be the join at the end of a roll of Elastilon and the beginning of a new roll. The longer the foil becomes during the installation, the more rows of flooring one can lay on it before pulling it out from under the boards. 5 rows would be a good guideline. Always inspect each board for damage or blemishes, and check to ensure that all the boards fit tightly together on all 4 sides prior to it making contact with the adhesive on the mat when the protective foil is pulled out from underneath it. Remember, no one should stand on the boards while pulling on the protective foil, as it will not pull through. From a security point of view, Elastilon allows for any problem to be easily rectified, since Elastilon is directly connected to the wooden floor and not the subfloor. An Elastilon installation is very comfortable to walk on, and its elastic properties help to minimize open joints throughout the seasonal cycle of expansion and contraction. There is also a double-sided option for installing stair treads and risers, which can be walked on immediately after the steps are fitted, which is a big advantage. Elastilon allows you to uplift and reinstall your floor at another location. Elastilon has exceptional sound deadening properties, which have been tested and comply with the IIC and STC specifications, which result in a quieter room above and below. Elastilon Strong, with its higher density, opens the door for installing wooden flooring in combination with underfloor heating. Elastilon Sport gives a cushioned floor suitable for aerobic floors and home gyms. Elastilon provides numerous solutions for wooden flooring. And while Elastilon works, you relax.
So guys, now that you've seen this video, I just want to tell you a little bit about the history of Elastilon. Elastilon was started by an installer just like us that lived in Holland, installing wooden floors, trying to find a better way because he was also tired of having moisture issues and pressure cupping and this sort of thing. So he played around with these sticky mats and he did trials for about 4 to 6 years and he put it on the market. And 30 years later, this product is now on the market 26 years through 30 countries. So Fred van Beers is the inventor's name of the system, and he started exporting throughout the whole world. And I happen to be the South African agent. And for 15 years, I handled Elastilon in South Africa. And through my 15 years, we never had to replace one floor. I won't say we never had issues. There's issues with everything. But I'll go through those issues, what kind of problems one could happen to have with Elastilon compared to what to happen to have with adhesive or glue downs or nail downs. So, one would think, what kind of a bond can one get with a simple mat with a bit of glue on it? So I'm going to show you what sort of bond one gets, because we know how strong the bond is on the elastic adhesives. I mean, it is unbelievable. You'd virtually need a crowbar to try and delaminate or lift that floor off the concrete. The adhesives are so strong. So I'm going to show you another video of what we call Elastilon Lock. Now, Elastilon Lock is a double-sided bond, and we are promoting to you a single-sided mat because we want to create a floating floor, which I'm going to go into a little bit later, why we want to create floating floors. So I just want to show you the strength of the adhesive.
T&G.For. Nee, die moet zo moeilijk mogelijk maken. Nee. Helemaal. Echt zo denken. Hier heb je zwaar. Dit is heel zwaar geschreven. Nee. Nou zeg maar gewoon dat het niet gaat.
Je hebt nog kwartier. Probeer van de andere kant dan, nee, maar hier.
Hier?
Nee, ja, achterin.
Nee, laat die kant maar.
Nee. Stukje, maar dan van deze kant.
Je moet van dezelfde kant.
Dan komt er gewoon niet om. Komt er echt niet om.
Hoe kan dat zo stevig zitten met kleedwater? Het blijft met water. Gewoon blijkt onmogelijk te zijn. Nee, dan houd je dat film uit. En dan, het blijkt onmogelijk te zijn om het hout op een normale manier te zijn om die op te houden. Je mag het wel weer ophouden.
Nee.
Hoort het gelijk op? Oh, die mag ik niet doen. Yes.
Okay guys, so you've seen that video now. I mean, that is the bond of the adhesive on the Elastilon mat. There's been people that have tried to copy Elastilon over the years, but they cannot get the bond right. This is a permanent bond mat with a guarantee of 25 years, but it's good for life. You know, it's the most unbelievable product. So, to tell you why we don't market that product, the lock for installing wooden floors, and I'll tell you later on why we do market lock for another purpose altogether. So the lock is too good. Basically you back down to gluing down, and we're having the same sort of problems if there's moisture or whatever it may be, pressure cupping and this sort of thing. So we have a single side mat. So one side is not sticky, the other side is sticky. So with a single side mat, this creates a floating floor. So what's the advantage of a floating floor? Well, with a floating floor, one can now put a 6mm poly. So here it is, guys. A 6mm poly. it has a 0 perm rating. So with a 0 perm rating, we know that no moisture is going to come through to the underside of the floor, and we also know that it only takes 2 percentage points of moisture difference in moisture content underside of the floor to the top of the floor to create moisture cupping. So we have decided to go with a floating floor with a 6mm poly on concrete slabs, on grade and below grade. So the floor is basically peel and stuck onto the mat as a floating floor. There is 0 glue, guys. There's no glue in the tongue and groove whatsoever. Here's the mat stuck to the back of the board. You're seeing the bond. You've got no problem with delamination. No glue in the tongue and groove means it's got great advantages. One advantage is that if you need to do a repair or change a board or change a plank, you can, as per usual. The other advantage of having no glue in the tongue and groove is that each board can shrink, expand and contract individually instead of having a full floor glued together which moves as a panel, as a full panel. So that's another advantage. A third advantage of floating your floor is that it cannot pressure cup. So with a poly, we eliminated moisture cupping. With a floating floor, we are now eliminating pressure cupping. So what causes pressure cupping? Well, it's humidity. Moisture is causing moisture cupping from the bottom, and pressure cupping is caused by humidity. So once the humidity grows in the room and the floor expands, because wood, as we know, is hydroscopic, the floor will expand and close your expansion joints. And once it's closed your expansion joints, it continues to expand. That floor is not going to be under pressure and cup like a rigid installation will do that's fixed to the slab or fixed to the subfloor. It will simply bulge up. So I'm going to now drop in a picture of what happens with Elastilon in a humidity compared to what happens in a rigid installation being a glue or nailed down. And here's the picture. So in this picture, the picture on the top left, you can see a repair. This repair is never ever going to happen with a floating floor on Elastilon. This is a major repair. And on the right hand picture, you can see the cupping. That could be caused by pressure or it could be caused by moisture. Now, when you've got a floor that's pressure or moisture cupped, in general, you're going to be replacing that floor. If it's moisture cupped, because you need to get it off and sort out the moisture issues, whatever it may be. If it's pressure cupped, there are ways of fixing that, but it's going to take, could be 8 months, because you've got to now release the pressure and wait for the pressure to subside, re-sand the floor. That means it's a whole job. Your customer may not want to go through that. So the worst that can happen on the Elastilon, if you look at the bottom picture, you can see that straight edge over the floor. The floor is bulged up. So in that situation, because it's floating, you've got no pressure cupping, the floor has bulged up. And someone said to me, Stephen, I've seen a failure on the Elastilon. I said, really? I said, tell me about it. And they said, yes, we've seen the floor bulge up. I said, well, that's not a failure, that's actually a gift. So why is that a gift? He says, because I will tell you now, because you can take off your baseboards, re-cut open your expansion joint, and the floor will simply drop flat with 0 damage. So that might take you an hour, it might take you a day, but whatever it takes you, it's a quick thing to fix, and you're not replacing the whole floor at any expense. So that's the advantage of using a floating floor with no glue in the T&G. Right, there's other advantages to this mat. First of all, it's rated because it's 3mm thick, by the way. So it's rated with an IIC sound rating of 62 and an STC rating of 54. So automatically you've got a sound rated floor. So if you over concrete, you just put your poly, your mat, you've got the sound rating, even if it's gypcrete above grade, but on grade you're safe. You've got your sound ratings, you don't have to go put plywood down and raise, and then nail down and raise all the heights. So you've got a sound rating. The other thing about this mat, guys, it's VOC free and free of all toxins. Okay? And the nice thing about it, while you're using it, you know, we all know how uncomfortable knee pads are. So you're installing on your knees, on the Elastilon, so you don't even need knee pads anymore. I'd like to just go through the range of the different kind of mats available for different floors. The first one is Elastilon Strong. It's 3mm with a high density. Elastilon Strong is used for installing solid wooden flooring, on grade or below grade. A solid floor below grade, floating. Can you believe that? So that's the Elastilon Strong. It's also used in conjunction with in-floor heating for engineered and for solid. So if you've got an engineered floor or a solid floor with in-floor heating, Elastilon Strong. And just no in-floor heating, it's only for solid wooden flooring, solid hardwood flooring. The next mat is also 3mm thick. We call this Elastilon Basic. So Elastilon Basic is good for engineered tongue and groove flooring. That's it, engineered tongue and groove flooring, on grade, below grade, it's floating, no problem. As long as you've got your poly over your slab, coming up behind your baseboard, you're safe from moisture because poly, as we said, has a 0 perm rating. The next one, Elastilon Lock. This one, as you can see, is double-sided. This is the one we showed you in that video earlier on. So where do you use Elastilon Lock? Well, Elastilon Lock you can use on staircases. So what's the advantage or the benefit of using a double-sided mat on a staircase? Well, as we know, when we're doing a staircase, what happens is we often got to do each alternate tread so that the clients can get to their room at night or their sleeping area at night, so they don't walk on the wet treads. And the next day we come back and we fill in the other alternate treads, and then they've got to walk on the treads or remember to walk on the right tread, and you can get someone walk on the wrong tread, but a movement, I'm sure we've all that happened before. So with Elastilon Lock, it's basically fit your tread, peel out your wrapper, which I'm going to talk about when we show this. This is the wrapper that comes off the mat, off the actual mat itself, which you saw in the first video. And that's it. The floor is stuck. You walk on that tread immediately. So you can do the whole staircase in one shot. That's Elastilon Lock. And just to show you, I've got a tread here with Elastilon Lock. And I can tell you now, this bond to pull off, it's basically, well, it's impossible. You saw that. So I'll just put that down here one side. The next one we have is 10mm thick. The Elastilon Lock, by the way, is also 3mm. The next one is we call Elastilon Sport. It's 10mm thick, also floating. Floating floors don't give problems. We know that SPCs and laminates, click lock or snap lock, LVTs, LVPs are all snap lock floors. We know that floating floors in general, do not fail. So floating is safe. So we've kept even our 10mm Sport as floating. 10mm Sport's great for home gymnasiums. So you can now offer your clients a home gymnasium on your hardwood flooring. Halls, stages, aerobics floors, fitness centers, all can go on Elastilon 10mm. And for what it's worth, it hasn't been tested for ball bounce, but I've even installed a basketball court, a full basketball court in Angola on Elastilon 10mm. And then the last one I'm going to show you guys is a very interesting one. This one is Elastilon Removable. So removable is the only mat of ours which is a temporary stick. We're all going to do an exhibition at some stage, in the game or some stage in our lives in the industry, and we have a booth, and at our booth we want to display our beautiful flooring, and we normally glue the floors together so that people can see it, and afterwards the tear out and break apart and throwing away of the actual flooring itself is hard work and a waste. So with the Elastilon Removable, it's a temporary stick, so you can peel and stick your whole floor on this mat, no glue in the tongue and groove again. After the booth and after the show is over, you simply pop the floor off the mat and put the wrapper back on the mat, and you can use this mat up to 10 times. So that is now what we call Elastilon Removable. So I spoke about solid wooden flooring. According to NWFA, you cannot float a solid wood floor. However, we all know that the factory overrules, and we've been floating solid wooden flooring for 26 years. I've been floating solid wood for 15 years, but of course, with solid wood there is challenges. there's a couple of challenges. One is the acclimation, and we know with solid wood, if you don't acclimate, you can have problems, especially on a rigid glue down floor, a rigid floor or glue down floor. So once the floor is acclimated, and you know you've got to sticker stack individual planks out of the boxes, out of the bundles, to get the moisture content in the flooring to be the same as the moisture content in the air to reach the EMC. Once the EMC has been reached, the equilibrium moisture content has been reached, then you can install. So the other challenge with solids is the milling. A lot of the floors are milled because of the popularity of nail down floors. A solid plank may have a slight bow in it, which is great for nail down because that nail will pull that bow in. However, when it comes to glue downs, it's very difficult to pull that bow in. So if the floor is milled with some bows in it, you can get direct straight milling, so it's better. If it's got some bows in it, it may be not possible or it may be possible. If it's not too bad on the bow, you can always strap the floor and then pull the wrapper out from under the floor when it's tightly, and then release the strap and carry on like that. And you can do about 8 lines at a time. And I'm going to drop in a video just now showing how we do 8 lines at a time. So that's a solid wooden floor. So I'm going to give you another example of what happened to me back in South Africa on a solid wooden floor. I'd supplied a client with the flooring. I used to have my own brand in South Africa. And I supplied a client with a nice sizable order. I think it was about 2,000 square foot of flooring. And I didn't supply the Elastilon. And I got a phone call they didn't buy the Elastilon from me. And I got a phone call from the client that there's a major problem with the floor. I said, well, perhaps you should have thought about using Elastilon. What's going on? Because Elastilon, we don't have failures. They said, but we did use Elastilon. So I investigated it and found out the Elastilon was bought through a different installer who had sold in the Elastilon. So I said, now you need to explain to me the situation. So let's hear it. I'll tell you what the situation was. This floor, first of all, was directly across the road from the ocean, across the road from the beach. It was not acclimated, it was taken directly out of the box and installed immediately, and the moisture content in the flooring was probably somewhere around 8%. And as we know, directly across the road from the beach or the ocean, you might be using up to 14%. The other problem was the floor was about 20 yards wide. So you got a wide board, not acclimated, across the road from the beach. It's a recipe for disaster. So I said, okay, so this is what you do. The floor is obviously bowls, they called it buckling. So as I told you earlier on when I showed you the picture about sorting out the bowls, by taking off the baseboard and cutting back and dropping the floor flat without any damage, no pressure cupping. So they took off the baseboards and they had to cut and cut. Eventually they worked out, they cut 15 inches of this 20-yard wide floor. So if you take 20 yards, how many planks you've got, and if each plank had just gone about 2 millimeters larger, 1.5 millimeters larger, 15 inches. So that floor today is perfect. Has not failed, it did not fail. There's no pressure cupping on that floor whatsoever. So they cut back, they dropped flat, and that floor survived. So, and the mat stretched. And through the whole stretch, the mat did not break whatsoever. So that's really gave me the confidence to market our product with solids. But so if you don't acclimate, you might have a situation of cut back and drop flat. But of course, we don't want you to not acclimate. We want you to acclimate and not have these issues. If you have a bulge in general, it could be that the HVAC machine has been off for 2 weeks. Maybe the house is empty and they switch off the HVAC. All it takes then is put the HVAC back on. The moisture will be sucked out of the air again, because we know HVAC is a bit of a dehumidifier, and the floor will then drop flat. So it's a very good product to use to avoid moisture cupping because of the poly, and pressure cupping because of the floating. And over plywood subfloors, it's great because of the sound. It's 3 mil thick. It's a closed cell foam mat. So you got your IIC ratings as well. So now I'm going to just quickly drop in that video. I told you about the 8 planks. So I'm going to just quickly drop in the video of me installing 8 planks at a time and pulling out the Elastilon. So in this video, you'll notice at the end of it, I pulled the foil all the way out. I should actually have left it tucked underneath, a little bit under, but you can always tuck it back under, but I pulled it a little bit out. I should have left it underneath. And that's it, 8 lines done. Enjoy the video. So we've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines on this floor. There's some wide boards, narrow boards. It's a multi-width floor. And now we're going to stick this section down. So all I'm going to do, I'll put my blue tape, keep everything together, and just pull it and roll. Simple as that. And as I'm doing this, so the floor is being stuck down for life. Pull it and roll. Right, that's it. Now I can just put a bit of pressure. Stuck for life. There you go, on Elastilon. Okay guys, so you've seen that, but I have one more video for you. I did a webinar with the National Wood Flooring Association, of which 78% of the guys in the webinar were inspectors. And, well, let's see the video and then we can talk about it afterwards. So I did a poll the other day. I did a webinar on the National Wood Flooring Association, and in that we had 73% of the guys on my webinar were inspectors, and 18% were contractors, and 9% were manufacturers. So that was the breakdown. So I asked a couple of questions. The questions were, have you ever seen or experienced cupping of a wood floor caused by moisture from below? And the answer is, as you can see, 97% have seen it. That means there's a problem. And my next question, a little bit different, but also in the field of cupping, was, have you experienced pressure cupping of a wood floor that has overexpanded due to humidity or insufficient expansion gap? And the poll results there that 87% of people have seen it. The Elastilon system is tried and tested, proven itself over the last 26 years in 30 countries. I would love to come and do some demos with you. Call me now. Right guys, so you've seen that video. So you'll notice, as I said, 78% inspectors, and I asked 2 poll questions. The one question was, have you ever seen moisture cupping, which of course is moisture from the bottom, which can be a small thing as 2 percentage points difference. That's all it takes. You tested your moisture, you've done everything right, and all of a sudden there's a rain coming in, you've got 2 percentage point difference to the back of that floor. And who's to blame? The installers. It all sits here on the installer's shoulders. Because out of goodwill, it's got to be sorted. So 97% of the inspectors have seen cupping by moisture at the bottom of the floor. That's a high percentage. And we've been installing floors for hundreds of years, and we're still having these problems. I think we need to maybe look at different systems. I don't say you don't need to nail down anymore. I'm not saying you don't need to glue down anymore. Of course, nail down and glue down, these are definitely parts of our trade. But all I'm saying is consider Elastilon, especially over concrete, when it comes to having a floating floor with a poly to eliminate these problems that we have. So, of course, as a floating floor, one very important factor you need to do is make sure your slab is flat or your subfloor is flat, and the specification of flat is 1/8 of an inch. And of course, even though you've got the poly, don't go on green slabs or wet slabs. Make sure that everything is dry to spec as well. So, the other poll question was, have you guys ever seen cupping by pressure? Being it that the expansion joints are too small or there's humidity in the air cause the floor to expand, and the percentage of 87% is also high. It's also a problem. And remember, with Elastilon, because it's floating, you cannot have pressure cupping. It'll bulge, cut back, fall flat, or put the HVAC back on, whatever caused the problem. But cut back, it could be an acclimation issue that wasn't 100% acclimated. It could be a very wet season. Whatever it is, you can resolve it. You're not going to be replacing floors for pressure cupping and have unhappy customers. And that's what I would like to tell you guys about this video, is to consider Elastilon while you do your other installations, just consider it. And I'll make an offer to you now, guys. If you want, I will come on your site as long as I'm available. You'll see our schedules in our calendars, and I'll arrive on site. And if you want me to, I can begin an installation with you guys. I really want to work with you and find a way to get this going in the USA and with you guys using Elastilon. Well, there's one thing I learned in America. Blue tape. Installers love blue tape in America, and it's something we never had in South Africa. And I can't think why. I think maybe I should go back and introduce it there. It's the greatest invention, blue tape, especially with Elastilon, because as you can tape your boards before you pull out your flaps. So what a great thing, guys. Blue tape. I love it. Well, guys, I really appreciate you listening to and watching all my videos and listening to my talk to you guys and my webinar to you guys today. So I'm now going to move over to the Q&A and see if I can answer some of your questions.